insulated metal, blah, 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 blah. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume, and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus that I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent on performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. Kind of gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates is going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, I'm struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored products, exact match, potentially sponsored brands video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding. Hello, and welcome back to another very, very special guest episode of Ask Junglr. So, hi, I'm your host, Elizabeth Greene, and this is your first time joining us in. Welcome. Again, I tease that this is a guest show today, so I'm going to be bringing up our guests in a little bit. But first, a really quick word. So this, as you are my guest from the name, this segment is sponsored by Junglr. This is the Ask Junglr segment. So Junglr is an Amazon ad agency that focuses on helping founder-led brands accelerate growth without having to sacrifice profits through custom ad strategies. So definitely, if you are interested or you're trying to figure out Amazon ads, which is typically what this segment is about. So we show up here every single Thursday, rain or shine, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1 p.m. And this is a time for you to show up and ask your questions. We have very specific questions that we're going to be focusing on today, which is the area of expertise of our guests. So I want to welcome Chad Rubin to the show. Chad Rubin is the CEO of Prophecy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to give a little bit of background about yourself and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been in the Amazon space for almost 18 years now. So I started off in the e-commerce business. Actually, it still runs today. We make vacuum filters, coffee filters, air filters. We sell them on Amazon and off Amazon. Out of that, I found some new pain points around community on Amazon. This was really early in the marketplace days. And so we started Prosper Show and then started a software company called Skubana, which was an inventory management, order management system. Both of those businesses have been sold. And now I've been building for the past 4 years Prophecy, which is a dynamic pricing software that helps you maximize profit on Amazon. Now, we allow you to maximize profit, revenue, or target sales velocity, but using price as a lever that swings big doors. And we do it dynamically, very similar to like an Uber surge pricing. We do it dynamically based on the input. So you're in the driver's seat, you give us the boundaries, and we make it happen.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I know that is a huge question I get from a lot of Amazon sellers around pricing, which, by the way, format this first off. If you're showing up to this, we welcome you. Feel free to drop where you're listening in from in the chat. We would love to say hi. But this is going to focus around a lot of pricing questions, right? So we already have a couple pricing questions that our audience has asked. But Chad has been gracious enough. He's like, hey, pricing plays a lot into ads. So I know this is typically a more ad focused segment. So if you have any questions around advertising and how that plays into pricing, like, hey, if I go for price adjustments, is there any way, like, should I be making adjustments to ads? Like, that's a really, really interesting topic, and I'm sure we'll get into that. Awesome. We have someone listening in from the Philippines. Welcome. Appreciate you staying up late. I know it's super late over there. We have team members over there. So whenever I have someone who's willing to stay up late to listen to me, I feel super grateful. So appreciate it. Awesome. So again, we already had some questions that came in from the audience ahead of time. So we'll get to those first. But of course, if the audience is listening in, feel free to use the chat option. So how this works is they're streaming live on a ton of different platforms. And you can, again, use the chat to ask your questions, either Amazon advertising questions, or you can ask the pricing questions. Without further ado, let's give our audience some knowledge. And here's a big one, because there's a lot of ways that pricing definitely increase profits, 100%. But there's a lot of ways that you can do it wrong. So when it comes to adjusting pricing, what are some of the most common mistakes you see sellers make when pricing on Amazon?
Yeah, I would say the first mistake is actually not changing their pricing on Amazon. Most sellers are like extremely fearful of making changes to price. a lot of them are misinformed and they just actually don't know what the optimal decision is to go up in price or down in price. Because on Amazon, there's a second order of consequence when you make a change to price, and that is the impact on BSR. And so most sellers actually have no idea. So what they do is they just chronically, statically price their product and they don't change it. And how do they come to that price? They look at their competition and they say, hey, let me see what everyone else is offering. They copy the price of the brand who's probably already struggling and copy their price from somebody else. And maybe they go a little slightly below to remain competitive, but they don't actually match the customer's willingness to pay with the value that they're offering on the platform.
That is a good one. We already got a question in the chat, so I might just go ahead and pull this up because here's a good one, right? So when you're trying to figure out new products, right? I know I should adjust my price, but and like you said, like they check who all is on the market, maybe go a little bit low. But at some level, if they're selling on Amazon, they're like, hey, at least like have a benchmark. But this next question is, so if you're launching a product, right? You're starting from square when you have, like, you don't even know if it works or not. What does your pricing strategy look like for new launches?
So first of all, I just want to share that Prophecy, actually, we work with, the product needs to have at least 3 months of sell-through. So right out of the gate, we need to have data to make decisions. So you can make conscious, smart price adjustments. When it comes to actually new launches, I like to actually see how others have done it. And so if you look at, and I'm happy to share my screen.
Yeah.
We can have fun today. Why not, right?
Yeah, let's do it. You'll have to share it on your end and I'll pull it up.
Let me see if I can share here. Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry. Just pulling it up here. Window. Let's do this window right here. Share. Can you see it now?
Yep. Let me add it to stage. All right, there we go.
So let's just type in garlic press. I think this is just a fun category to use.
Classic.
And a classic example. And let's skip having him pay for a sponsored ad. Let's just pick as organic. And I'll take this. And so if you look at actually what happened with Zule and look at his launch strategy, so he's actually doing a ton of price optimization. Like if you look at all the different price changes and what happened, he's using price as a lever. And especially if you're doing a new launch, you should be using price as a lever as well. But you can just look at when he first launched, a huge BSR. Green is BSR, pink is the price. And so he started at a very low price, $7.45. Then he actually raised it $8.45, then dropped it down to $7.59, raised it back to. So essentially, he's candlesticking his price, going up and down and oscillating, and making decisions based on the data that's coming in to the platform. And so you can see all these different price changes that are happening, and all the candlesticking that's happening around going up and down to drive behavior around discoverability on the platform.
That is an insane pro tip. So those of you who are joining this, and this is why we have genius guests on like Chad, because you guys offer perspective that, we would have never thought of before, is I guess in a way of what you're saying is not just look at competitors' pricing today, but look at what they've done historically. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever heard somebody talk about that. Like I hear people talk about like, hey, go look, see who's ranked. But I've never heard someone mention like, hey, you can actually go back and see like over time the tests and where somebody else started out, and kind of, because that's a very common strategy I've heard of is, hey, price lower and then work your way up. But you have to remember, like in the beginning, right, we're gaining momentum. Like you said, the BSR, we're bringing that down. We're getting reviews that help us justify higher price points. And when you're in the beginning, you just don't have that.
Correct. Yeah. Now, another interesting strategy that's being deployed here and that we use at Prophecy is the sort of spotlight SKU, right? The hero SKU, which is this matte gray SKU. Well, if you look at his variations, let's just assume 20% of the people that are buying this product look at the other colors. And let's just say you're like, you know what? I just want a rose gold garlic press because it's going to match, I don't know, my cabinet candles in my kitchen. And you can see what happens, right? That price is actually $19.99. So essentially there's like this gateway drug or Trojan horse effect where you bring them in on one color and then you upsell them and cross-sell them into a higher variation color. And we actually have this strategy built into our algorithms of prophecy as well.
That's amazing. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, I'm sure you guys can't give away the secret sauce, but as far as like how you even go about that, what's the strategy there? Is it just a bunch of test it and see?
Yeah. So a couple of things, right? So you asked me initially, like what's happening with brands, and Amazon brands typically don't change price. And so like I can use so many examples of where you just see static pricing. Let's actually, well, I don't want to blow up the spot for that specific person, but I have lots of examples we can be sharing. So what we found is like a lot of Amazon brands are leaving a lot of money on the table because they don't change price. They use PPC as a lever, and they should, right? And that is acquisition, but they don't actually focus on the monetization, monetizing, taking what your mama gave you, right? And so when we look at examples, we see typically a 10 to 15% lift in profit in the first 60 days with brands that come use prophecy. And you can see in this specific example, this specific individual who happens to be also running a PPC agency, who actually sells supplements, you can see the red line is profit of this year, blue is profit of last year. And over time, we start to raise price. We get smarter over time. We actually anticipate when we're increasing and you're in the in-season, increasing demand, profits actually increase tremendously. Look at the gap. This is profit of this year. This is profit of last year. The gap starts to spread and spread further. Now, if we use the actual ASIN and look at what's happening on that specific ASIN, let's pull it up because it's nothing like going direct to the source on the platform. So let's look at on Keepa all time. Look at the BSR, which is green. Look at the pink, which is the price. And then you can see when prophecy started taking over. So prophecy started dynamically changing price. BSR actually drops, which is actually counter to what everyone believes and what everyone's been fed, because there's a ton of information in the space around this. And it's dangerous and reckless when someone's like, hey, just raise your price 5% because of inflation. It's like, that's not always the optimal decision. Sometimes you want a lower price, which means that if you lower price, you might sell more units, offsetting the lower price, driving more absolute profit dollars to the business and driving further organic rank. And so you can see these changes. Prices have increased because there is even more pricing power available to this specific person. And we've even increased the price even further here at the top. And so this is another great example of the power of pricing. Now, how does it work, to your question? You have to go smarter. It's not always about being cheaper. So how do we do it? I'm just showing you how we do it because I think a lot of people are interested in AI, and we're using real AI in this case. We first collect all the information. So you connect your Amazon account and you connect your Amazon seller account and your ad account. So
that's where you're saying you need at least the 3 months of selling data.
Totally.
Is there a specific amount of like orders or units that need to be moved in those 3 months, or is it dependent?
Yep. We need typically about 3 to 5 units a day.
Got it. Okay.
By the way, this all started, I just want to show everyone, I was initially doing this for my own business. So this is like a prettier example of a spreadsheet that I would use for one ASIN to make small changes and see how the market and how competitors and how Amazon and how our customers react to small changes in price. So I would essentially have someone fill this spreadsheet out. I would analyze it, and then I would let other people, or I would let like my team analyze it. I would look at it, and then I would essentially deploy those changes to the market. So you can see here, competitor prices, I would pull in, and we use this to figure out what's our goal, benchmark what we're doing, and let the data drive decisions. Now, that's how we build prophecy. And I was like, you know what, this is manual, this is painful. So when you come into prophecy, we pull all the data in, we suck it in for 2 years from the Seller Central API. We also pull in the data from Amazon advertising from that API. And then very similar to Facebook or Instagram or even LinkedIn or Netflix, if you don't like anything, if you don't watch a video, the algorithm doesn't know what to serve you to hit your dopamine to encourage you to keep scrolling, the scroll of death. In that same way, if an Amazon seller never changes price, which almost all of them, 99.9% of them never do, we have to learn from those price changes. So we have something called hyper learning. For the first 30 days, we train the model on small price tests at scale to see how your competition, how does Amazon react, how do your customers react, and then we deploy those changes to the market in what we call the optimization phase. And that's where we're pushing.
And when you say,
yeah,
when
please.
you say small changes, are you talking, is it like a percentage? Is it a dollar value? Is it, it depends? Like how small is small? I guess
So
would be my question.
small is like 1%, 2% changes. It's really in the nooks and crannies. It's in the fringes. And we do that. We make small changes because Amazon doesn't like big changes.
Right.
So in the actual software itself, you connect your account, like I mentioned, and then you can set up, well, do I want to target velocity? Do I want to make more profit, or do I want to make more revenue? And then you can set up your profile. So if you're subscribed and save and you have that badge, you can set that up. If you want to be more aggressive, you can set that up. If you want to target gross profit, which is your profit before your ad spend, or net profit, which is post ad spend, you can target that and then set up your COGS, your min price, your max price, your variation strategy. You can link your variations together and set up a hero or lead SKU to see how they synchronize together. And then we go into, and so that really dictates to your point around, well, what is the percentage changes that we make?
Got it. So it's dependent on, like, if you say like, hey, I want to go super aggressive and I want to maximize for velocity, well, that one's gonna, that's more aggressive changes versus less.
So for velocity, for example, we have even like other settings in the back end that allow you to target velocity, that take into account inventory intelligence around how much you have at Amazon's facility and enabling surge pricing. There's a whole bunch of features and customizations you can make in the platform.
That's that. So this kind of feeds into one of the questions that we had gotten earlier in the form. So by the way, for these, we prioritize anyone who pre-asked questions. So I have a couple pre-asked questions that I'm going to bring up. I know we have one other in the chat, but this was a question somebody said, and this goes into like kind of what you're talking about, this hyper testing. Does Amazon have a limit on how often I can change price, say within a year or so? Like, do you get penalized for frequent price changes? Sounds like.
Not at all. Not at all. So our model takes into account all these signals, including BSR. So we essentially pull all of that in, and we're not willing to sacrifice profit for BSR. So we maximize profit without hurting your BSR, and our model learns and it gets better and faster. We do it more effectively than a human can because we're pulling in so many decision nodes to figure out what the optimal price is.
Got it. So detriments to price change, because that's kind of what you were saying. And it sounds like if you were a beginner seller, anything to take away from this talk is you should be testing pricing. Like, that is one big lever to pull, and you shouldn't be afraid to test pricing, because I know that's a question that, or feedback I get from some sellers. They're like, no, I should be testing pricing, but there's this fear, like you said, that it would impact BSR, because it most definitely can if you don't know how to do it. So when it comes to adjusting price so it doesn't impact BSR, I know Prophecy, it's like the fundamentals you're talking about times 10 on steroids, right? But in terms of the things that if a seller was doing it manually that they should be aware of, what size of price changes are most effective to like not negatively impact sales or BSR?
You have to test it, right? You make small changes and really test those price changes that you're making to understand what is the impact, because every category is different. Every product is different. So we have an algorithm per ASIN. And so you have to be able to understand and test what's happening in my category. Are my competitors reacting? How does Amazon react to these price changes? Am I a national brand? Are they seeing that I have channel conflict on other platforms right now? Are they seeing that my conversion rate is going down? Like, all these things to think about. And so what I suggest is, like, never listen to a guru. You always let data drive the decisions in the business. And so I view Amazon as a commoditized marketplace, no different from Wall Street. And so on Wall Street, like hedge funds are essentially using pricing strategies at a massive advantage. And so there's
Mhm.
tons of parallels, and consumers are making not rational, inefficient decisions, which creates inefficiency in the marketplace. And that's the inefficiency and the mispricing that we capitalize on. And everyone else should be capitalizing on at the same time. So small incremental changes, testing to see what happens. How do your competition react? How does Amazon react? How do your customers react? Those are the three things you need to look at to inform your strategy going forward.
That's really great insights. If someone was to do those tests and watch for things, what would say would be your top KPIs to look for?
Well, by the way, I can share that spreadsheet. So if anybody's listening and they're
Yeah,
tuning in right
definitely.
now, like if they email me at chad@prophecy, I'm happy to share the price optimization framework with you. My personal email is chad@prophecy.com. So the things that you want to look for is you want to look at your conversion rate. You want to look at your
Mhm.
sessions. You want to look at actually your ad spend. And we can talk about this soon about how
Yeah.
ad spend should be harmonized and united with price. You should look at your competition price to see how they react in their BSR. We also would pull in unit velocity of our competitors and unit velocity or revenue of our competitors as well. So all of this feeds into the model to understand what the optimal price is.
Mm, that makes sense. So you're basically saying like, hey, is traffic going up or down? Conversion rates going up and down? BSR going up and down? And then that says, all right, is this a positive or negative impact model? I mean, if you're doing it, like you said, manually, it
Sure.
means you can't test as frequent as often. It's harder to ingest all of the data points, especially across large catalogs. It's definitely where software is leveraged the best, especially when you're talking about things at scale. Not that you can't benefit on a smaller scale, but the amount of balls you can juggle when you have like 20,000 SKUs in an account is, at that point, you're maybe managing one or two well, honestly.
Yeah, like pricing is a massive data intensive effort. It's
Mm-hmm.
a intricate subject matter. It's also politically charged, right? Because you have some brands that are selling at Sephora or Target and they have limitations. So, but it's an opportunity that I think if you don't have massive channel conflict, you can actually like blow some of these legacy brands out of the water.
Mm. We did have another question in the chat. Someone was asking, I think this kind of feeds into and maybe just puts a specific scenario around the testing that you were just talking about, like watching for things. But somebody was asking, like, our target price is $85 and we currently have no reviews. They're asking, like, if you were going to test, here's an age old question that again is probably highly dependent. Is lowering the pricing or offer a coupon? Do you have any data around that?
I don't have any data around it. I can only see like what I've seen other people succeed at. And so actually you can do both, right? You can lower price and you can have a coupon and stack it together. Uh, I think that like if you have no reviews, you have to be willing to take a loss to get reviews. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you look at that garlic press strategy I had shared, I had done an analysis around because I think the garlic press category is probably one of the hardest categories on Amazon. If you
Yeah,
can succeed in that
by far.
category, you can succeed in any category. So if you look at that strategy and that launch strategy, pricing was front and center around the strategy and willing to take a loss of
Mm-hmm.
$1.1 million. And now he's actually reaping the benefits of that, right? Where he's been unchallenged for 3 or 4 years with a bestseller badge in one of the best categories on Amazon.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things that I think is kind of overlooked in today's market when people talk about like investment, and we'll talk about I think how pricing feeds into ad strategy. I think it's a really interesting conversation that not many people are having. But in terms of kind of selling at a loss or looking for profitability right out of the gate, it happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. Like you'll have those unicorn products, but like old school strategies before Amazon super cracked down on the giveaways was like to give away a ton of products and to get those reviews and to get that ranking up. And to be honest, and maybe it's just because the current market is so competitive and like pricing, cost of everything is up, cost of shipping is up. So maybe there's just less room. But I don't know. To me, it seems like there's like this disjointed, like, oh, we used to like give away a bunch of products. You would give away the products. You're completely out the, whatever cost of goods you had there, plus all whatever fees it takes to sell it. And then, you're oftentimes on top of that paying that customer to go through that work and do this stuff. So like the cost of running those search find buys was quite like high actually. So it's almost like, I guess I would view it in a way is like that low pricing strategy is sort of like old school you paying up. You don't have like as definitive, like, okay, I'm going to give away X amount and get this many reviews. After you get a couple reviews, you can say like, well, it takes me this many, sales to get a review. And so I have to sell this many. So I have to sell this many. I mean, there is mathematics you can work backwards from, but to me, it almost seems like you take those investments that you used to do in search find buys and you roll them into other like pricing strategy, potentially ads. And I don't know, to me, it seems like in today's market, it's like that's kind of like forgotten that those used to cost a lot of money to do those ranking strategies. I don't know if you have a similar.
Yeah, it used to be super expensive, and that tool obviously is not available to you anymore. So I would say use other tools that are in your toolbox. And one of those is price. And most people's first resort is either drive traffic off Amazon or driving traffic on Amazon. And that's the only thing they focus on is acquisition. And they don't care about the monetization piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't focus on it. It's just, and by the way, this is a lever you can pull. You don't have to pay extra to pull the lever, and it all drops down to the bottom line. It doesn't cost you a cent. It just makes you sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've teased it a little bit, and I know we're getting some Amazon ad questions in the chat. Maybe we can throw those up at the end as well. But you had mentioned like pricing and PPC should be united, which I 100% agree with. Do you mind sort of just laying out the foundations of why, and then maybe we can talk about how they work together?
Yeah. So to me, pricing drives ad spend, not the other way around. And so let's use, actually, I can actually share a great example here. I can pull it up. So I think this table really could help here. Let me just open this. Share my screen. I mean, you can see it.
There we go. Oh, this looks so nice.
Amazing. So let's just assume, for example, we increase price 20%. So now you have more margin to play with. And so that means that your ACoS target is not really relevant anymore. And you can increase your ACoS 20%, which really means that you're increasing your ad spend 20%. And so the agency that you're using would perhaps look worse. That, oh, my ACoS is now increased from 20 to 24%. Things maybe got worse. But if you actually see what happened to your contribution profit dollars, your contribution profit dollars actually doubled during that time period. And your ROAS looks worse because that's the inverse of ACoS. But your POAS, which is your profit on your ad spend, is 27% more effective. So there's an opportunity to use price and ad spend together, and not a lot of people are doing this right now, to actually unlock even more profit dollars in the business that you didn't know that you were leaving on the table. So said in a different way, let's just say organically you increase your price. If you increase your price, inversely, your demand, unless you're Nike or Apple, and I know most people think that they're Nike or Apple, but let's just assume you're not Nike or Apple. Typically, you increase your price and your demand drops. Well, you can artificially inflate that demand with PPC spend. And when you do that, you actually have more margin to play with to be able to spend more to acquire those customers. So let's go back to that same garlic press example. And let's look at what's happening in this space. There's so much to learn from literally just spending time on Amazon.com. Like I'm sometimes at night, I'm just like surfing the net on Amazon.
Yeah.
My wife's like, yo, babe, what are you doing? And I'm like, I am just learning on Amazon.com. I'm just like seeing what people are doing, what they're up to. And so if you look here, look at so we've got Zule sponsored bestseller. Okay, we got all the sponsored ads. Then if you look at this company here, Gia, look at the price point, $30. So they're actually playing this game where they're increasing their price, but artificially driving ad dollars to that listing because they have way more margin to play with. And they're doing great, right? You can see that they're selling over 1,000 at a far higher margin than Zule is. But this is like an example of someone that's like capitalizing on that strategy of using price and ad spend together to drive more contribution profit dollars in the business.
Got it. So essentially you're saying like it's a game of like percentages and margins. So in the beginning you say like that's why you're able to go up more and invest more in ad spend, allow more ACoS, a little bit higher ACoS and still be profitable, and oftentimes even more profitable, because you're saying if you add an extra dollar, what does that do to your percentage margins? And then you could just take those percentage margins and then apply it to your advertising. It's kind of how it works.
Yeah, totally. And so like when we change price, a lot of times we'll give to the brand manager or the agency, whoever's running the ads. We know where price is going the week before. So if you know where price is going, you know where ad spend should go based on the intention you have for the specific SKU. And so we'll share where the price is going in advance. And then they either adjust the budget or they adjust the bid on a high performing keywords to unlock the behavior that we're trying to achieve collectively.
Got it. So it's really about being able to like preempt that is the best way.
Yeah, that is the way, and nobody's doing it right now, right? Essentially, really, PPC, price, and inventory are these three pillars that pricing touches all parts of the business, and so all parts of the business should touch pricing and should be orchestrated together to unlock the behavior you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with that. That ads, it's kind of said inversely of that is what I've found, which is why I love bringing guests on the show who can add like perspective to what it is that we do. Is ads really touch everything in the business, profitability, which of course pricing touches profitability, like inventory positions need to be adjusted for ads. Like you said, pricing is adjusted for inventory. Like all of these things definitely work in synergy. And like you said, if you're not testing pricing at all, really you're leaving a really huge lever off the table and you're not even trying it.
And by the way, it's not really just about, it's like testing price and exploiting those inefficiencies, but even just having the conversation about price, like most people aren't really connecting the dots, and pricing is a muscle. So when you're having meetings, price should be given a seat at the table and should be talking about, okay, what's our strategy here that we're trying to unlock for financial gain? How does that relate to our PPC strategy? How does that relate to our inventory that we have? And how do we have those three things working together?
Got it. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. We do have some questions in the chat. We'll see if we can get them. We also have some specifically Amazon ad questions if you're down for us to pull those up. I know you said you're a game for pretty much anything. Some of these can keep us on our toes.
Anything goes.
Awesome. Cool. So again, we were prioritizing the PPC questions. We'll definitely get to some ad questions as well. So format for this, by the way, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Let us know. But a question was, how many campaigns can we create for ranking purposes on newly launched products, autos, or manual? I know I definitely have my opinions on this, but feel free to jump in, or I can field this one if you prefer.
You can field it first, and I'm happy to share my perspective on it.
Yeah, definitely. And it might be interested to share your perspective on pricing and, the profits and how that plays into launch strategy. Because that's actually one thing that we're super big on is your launch really should depend on the business resources, bar none. I find that most people who are dissatisfied with launches or whatever the launch strategy may be is that they've run hard in one direction or the other, be it trying to be super, super profitable and they were more like kind of sales growth focused, or they didn't launch as aggressively as needed because they had a lot of inventory and needed to move it quickly. And then anyone who is more focused on like profitability is going to be really dissatisfied if you go too heavy too fast, and that requires too much ad spend. So really we say like what can you afford to lose, but like what's the runway in the business, what is the cash flow, right? If you launch too aggressively, is that going to eat into the cash flow that you need for your second reorder? That's a huge conversation to have before you even do any keyword research. I find way too many ad strategists don't even think about that when it comes to building their ad strategy. And then so the second follow-up is just, okay, so now that we know what the business goals are, what does that look like in the market? So that's gonna be like, what kind of search volume, what kind, how many keywords do we have to pick from? Do we have just a handful? Are there lots of search volume, a long tail? And then those two things will really help shape, because really what I find is the two most important things to get right on any launch strategy is one, what keywords you're picking, and then making sure to curate those keywords given business goals. Once you have that set up, that's 9 tenths of the battle. And then really when it comes to like setting up the campaigns, we prefer to start with sponsored products, primarily an exact match if you can. That allows you to be more aggressive with where those ad dollars are going to be spent. There is a misunderstanding, I think, in the industry of that everyone says exact match because it is the best and the one that we're going to work towards or something. And like there's this huge conversation happening right now that like, oh, like does everyone just forget about broad and phrase? Like those ones work too. 100% they work, right? I'm not saying don't launch those. What I'm saying is just the nature of exact match targets. You can say, hey, Amazon, I want you to take these ad dollars, my budget for the campaign, the bids that I'm setting on it. I need you to spend that here on these specific search pages. And you can direct that. With broad and phrase, it's not possible. You say, hey, I want you to take this and in broad, have at it, right? I hope you target this search term and this search page, but I have no control if Amazon's going to spend my ad dollars there. And so that is the reason why exact match is very beneficial on launch, because we've done the work on curating the search pages that we want to show up after and the ones that we want to spend our ad dollars on. So exact match allows you the leverage to like force the algorithm to do that. Now, the performance of that and how that's going to go, is really dependent on the product and the offer. Maybe good or bad out of the gate. Good or bad, I think, is relative depending on goals, but that's how I would go about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to add just a comma to that. I think your first answer, which was how much are you willing to lose, was the appropriate answer, because we're in this market where it's pay to play and you have to be willing to bleed some money to get access, let's just say, into the market right now, especially if you're in a competitive market. So you have to be willing to lose money. And I think most of the successful sellers and brands are actually willing to lose money initially to make more money in the long run. And two, I mean, but I have my own e-com business and I've definitely have made tons of changes in the ads world on that business to maximize our bottom line profits, because that's the heartbeat of the company. Like after I sold Stubana, my business was going out of business and I had to make some massive changes. And so one of those changes was around making sure that we're isolating profit. And so we know what we're spending and how that contributes to our profitability as a company. The other thing that we started doing is that we were advertising exact, and we started to just do more exploration with to discover more keywords that we weren't targeting. And that also meant like updating our listing content as well. But we needed to do more exploration and testing to figure out, okay, are there keywords that we're not hitting that are at a lower bid, that because we're in a very competitive environment, and that we can pay less for and still get conversions on. And I think that's equally, in my opinion, equally as important.
No, 100% I would agree with you. I guess another comment to what you said, I think just a further explanation of, how I was saying like focus on exact match. Sponsored products, by the way, tends to have the largest impact on ranking on organic market share is what we found. So for that reason, I think it makes sense to double, triple down there. I'm not saying, I always say that and like add the asterisk. That doesn't mean I hate on other ad types. Like other ad types have validity. We do run them, but in the beginning is like gain organic visibility as fast as you can. And if that is the goal, sponsored product, it makes sense to invest more heavily there, more aggressively there.
Yeah, I think goal of visibility, discoverability, and I think a goal of just like gathering data also at the beginning, just to add to it. Those three things are so important because the more data you have, the better decisions you're gonna be able to make. And even though you might be losing money on that data initially, that data is actually gonna enrich your business in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's honestly in a nutshell what it, when you say data driven, you guys are definitely doing that with the pricing. It's like, we did this. What happened? Okay. Is this getting us where we want to go? Which is why I love you guys saying, hey, are you trying to focus on velocity? Are you trying to focus on profitability? Like, let's figure out where we want to go, because those KPIs are going to be defined by where we need to go, right? If we're focused on profitability, maybe we almost don't care about ad profitability in terms of ACoS. Like you're saying, there are certain scenarios where you can go up and actual net profit dollars go up, right? So it's like, what are the KPIs that we can define to tell us, are we headed in the right direction? And then making sure that we're watching those and then iterating on, depending on what those numbers look like.
1,000%.
Awesome. And you talking about sort of in the beginning and paying for visibility. This is an interesting question. I don't know if you have perspective on. They're saying like, hey, so newly launched product, they enrolled in the Vine program, which is awesome. Means you're going to get those reviews. Amazon has already shipped some of your items to the customers, and they're asking like, should we be waiting for those reviews to roll in before we do PPC campaigns, or do you start it out of the gate?
My perspective is you start throwing ad dollars down immediately to drive a successful launch. So like making sure your product's FBA, getting those SKUs at Vine was great. I think you need to start PPC campaigns now because that's going to drive at least 50% of your revenue or 50% of your unit velocity or 50% of your demand. And so Amazon looks at those, it's like almost like a quality score to see like, are you driving demand to the product? Is that converting? And that helps discoverability. And if you're not doing that, you're not relevant.
Yeah, that's what we've seen as well. We run ad strategies straight out of the gate. Like I said, make sure you're picking the right search terms to go after. You know where your product fits in the market, double down there. Worst thing you can do is like do no market research and be like, I think this is my top keyword, and then just try and throw a bunch of ad dollars on it. You definitely want to be strategic with it. But that's what we've seen as well is, right out of the gate. The only thing I would say on that is make sure that you have fulfillable inventory when you are, trying to push some ad dollars behind it. Ad dollars really at the end of the day are traffic. Like Chad was saying, like you want to push visibility of the products. Ads are that lever for visibility, bar none. The thing is, when you get that visibility, when you get that traffic, they need to be able to purchase. And there is something where like Amazon will be like, hey, we're checking in your products. And so technically they can purchase. But Amazon sellers, myself included, are notorious. One, we've been conditioned to be like, purchase everything last minute. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get to it, right? I'm going on vacation. I need that thing. And then you're like, I can get it on Amazon, right? I'm going to get it like next day, 2 days. So you like put it off because you're like, oh, it's going to get there fast, right? And then you realize you're down to the wire and it's 2 days out and you're like, oh shoot. So you're like, all right, I got to get it now, right? Well, if someone's in that shopping scenario and they land on your listing, but because your products are getting checked into the warehouse and they don't have it, 2-day or like fast shipping on them because they're not like in ready to be fulfilled, you will see like 2 weeks out or so on the ship times. And I know I've done that so many times where I'll like say like, oh, this is the exact product I want. I would love to purchase, but dang it, ship times are 2 weeks out. And I just,
like I'm in Florida and we get 4-hour deliveries here. And so if I see,
oh my gosh, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. We have a fulfillment center in town and I don't get 4-day shipping. What's that?
Yeah, it's wild. So if I don't see 4 hours, like they're not getting my business pretty much.
So we're getting like super spoiled.
I think like one other thing to look at, Asif, to your question is, okay, fine, you're driving traffic, you get your Vine reviews. I think one thing that's overlooked is actually like, what's the quality of the review that came in? Your first reviews are so important. And so if you're going to drive if you're going to put hard dollars down, hard-earned money down, and your review that you got on Vine is 3.6, or it's even 3.9 or 3.8, like I would actually see what the voice of the customer is and reevaluate based on the reviews that come in. And that's just like my perspective. I think you need to be 4.5, 4.6 or higher, especially on your first initial reviews, to gain the kind of traction and discoverability, so that you're not just like overpaying for ad spend and not getting any visibility organically.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And that goes back to being data driven. So data driven is not always just numbers. It's also listening to the voice of your customer, which is where you can find reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's really hard when we get a negative review. Sometimes they literally don't understand, right? That's something. But after we can get past the initial, like, oh, this sucks, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, maybe there could be something to evaluate. Like, I talked to a seller recently and he was saying, like, well, we were getting a bunch of negative reviews, but actually when I looked at it, like, we were claiming something on the listing that in all honesty we probably shouldn't have been claiming, and so that led to, you know, poor experience. So oftentimes there is a nugget of truth in those, and if you're going to be open to learning from it, you will succeed in the long term far better than somebody who's not willing to learn from something.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Another couple, I think 1 or 2 questions on ad strategy. This is always a great one. So this one may go into your pricing. Maybe you would recommend looking at pricing to kind of fix this. But the question is, like, trying to reduce aid costs, but we're unable to reduce after crossing the best-selling keywords. I'm assuming that means ranking on the best-selling keywords, but I'm not sure. And also auto campaigns. So it sounds like struggling to bring down aid costs. What do you do? I mean, I know from an ads perspective some tips, but as far as, is this something you would recommend testing pricing on?
I mean, I think pricing is a massive lever that Amazon is sensitive to. And so for rankings purposes, like we've seen time and time again, that price drives ranking position. And so I would use price in the situation. I personally am not like the biggest ACOS advocate as a metric. I think it's a bendable metric.
Yeah.
And a lot of people take it as the gospel. And so I would move away from an ACOS metric to drive your decisioning around this. But I certainly would adopt pricing as part of the strategy for ranking. Like no doubt about it.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's one big lever to pull, is testing pricing. But I 100% agree with Chad on ACOS on Amazon is, if you want to grow sales, is not going to be your most important KPI. I'm not saying it's not for like profitability. If you have high ACOS, that does not necessarily mean you have high or low profitability on your account. The reason why is that advertising, like we've been talking about, is you paying for traffic. If that traffic gets you more organic visibility, it is worth paying and potentially losing out on profit just to drive that specific traffic, if you can make up for it in terms of your organic visibility and additional sales off the back end. That's very, very specific to the ad platform on Amazon. On other, sort of ad platforms, if you're running Shopify ads, obviously you would look at things like lifetime value, but typically speaking, you're like, hey, how am I converting on this one order, right? What are the profitability specifically of ads? I'm looking at no other, sort of like organic growth factors. And the best way that we found to sort of like easily correlate this is to look at total ACOS numbers, or obviously at the end of the day, like net profits and things. So I would back up a little bit. So if you're saying like, hey, it sounds to me like you've done some ranking, you've ranked on some main keywords, and now you're looking to pull back and you can't quite get it under control, I would recommend going through and just saying like, how has my total ACOS improved over time, or has it? Because if your ACOS remains high but total ACOS is going down, which actually would mean profitability is increasing, then you might not be in as bad of a position as you think if you're only looking at, so ACOS is what is the profitability of my ads in isolation with no other factors applied, which is not that it's, you don't want to completely ignore it, But I was saying, if you focus only on the profitability of the ads and no other, you're not accounting for total account profits, you will make decisions that will in the long run hurt your total profitability of the account, bar none. I've seen it way too many times. So what I'm saying is like, step back, take a more holistic view of how does this ad strategy fit into my overall, say, profitability. And then of course, if it's not where you want it to be, then, you know, I would pull some levers. One of them being a really good thing of testing pricing, as Chad has laid out quite well.
Yeah, I
So if
mean,
you didn't catch the whole thing, go
to
catch the
the
replay.
to the point of, I share that table, and so you can check the replay of the table. But what we did was in that example, we increased price 20% and ACoS increased 20%. So it went from 20 to 24%, and that drove 100% more contribution profit. And so if you're looking to just reduce ACoS at all costs, I think that's actually I think ACoS sometimes it allows people to avoid asking meaningful questions about your goals and intentions. And if you can actually do both together and unite price and ad spend together, it allows you to essentially maximize every dollar of opportunity of spend.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to put up, Chad was saying, so you have that deck that you shared in the beginning, and you also have that spreadsheet that you said where you were doing the calculations of, hey, pricing changes and how that affects the ACoS and or your target ACoS, which I think are fabulous resources. So Chad was saying you can email him, chad@prophecy.com, which we appreciate you being willing to give out of that information to our audience. So if you want any of those resources, or if you are interested in saying, hey, I've been selling for 3 months, I'm up to, 5 orders a day at least, so I have data in my account, I want to test my pricing, I also know it's a beast, I don't even know where to get started, and I want to be doing it the right way, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Chad. Which, Chad, what is the best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
Well, it's my personal email, which is chad@prophecy.com. That's PROFASEE. So profit you could see, and also prophecy, like seeing the future. It's play on words. But also you can find my thoughts. I'm posting a lot of them on LinkedIn and Twitter, but I'm certainly here to really make an impact on the community and support those that need it. So feel free to reach out. I'm here to support you.
Definitely. And you can always check out the website. I'm going to drop that link in the comments as well. Prophecy.com. Looks like you can book a demo, which would be awesome if you're trying to figure out if it's going to make sense for you. So this has been awesome. Looks like I think we have enough time. We got a sneaky one in the chat that I can actually answer really quick. It's an ad question. The question is, funneling performing search terms into auto campaigns into phrase exact match campaigns. Do you negate those search terms in the auto campaigns? No, I do not. I have very specific reasons why, and I have battle scars to make me very hesitant to ever do that. I would just say the one thing you just want to be very careful of is when you're going about your bid adjustments, you want to be very careful that you're not continuously increasing your bids on like those autos or other ones, which would cause, maybe to struggle to gain impressions in phrase or exact match. So that's something that we try and adjust for. It's actually baked into our bid algorithm, which we wrote ourselves and use internally. Which is why we're still using it all these years later, even though there's some amazing tools on the market that I love, I'm good friends with. Things like this, where you want to be more conscious of sort of like the funnels and where you're triggering ad spend. But you can very easy through some other tools. Like it's basically you just set like bid ceilings on things. So that would be something I would caution against, right? But in terms of preemptively negating it, I've seen very drastic negative impacts if you do that too excessively. So cool. I appreciate it. This has been a fabulous conversation. I appreciate you joining us. I gained so much perspective. So again, if you have any questions on pricing structures, Chad shared some amazing resources. If you're watching this on audio, definitely go check out the videos on YouTube. The replay should be on LinkedIn as well. And it's been great. I appreciate it.
Elizabeth, yeah, thanks for being such a gracious host. I'm thankful for you having me on.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely catch you in the next one. And with that, I appreciate everybody joining. Once again, this has been sponsored by Junglr. So we're an Amazon ad agency focused on helping founder-led brands hit the next level of growth through strategies that not only help accelerate your growth, but take nothing away from your profitability. So if that's something you would be interested in, feel free to reach out to us as well. And with that, we are here every week, every Thursday, same time, same place. So we hope to catch you all in the next one. Thanks, everyone. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.